course, starting today by paying tribute to the wonderful Paul O'Grady, an incredible entertainer, a passionate animal rights campaigner, a husband, a friend, and a very familiar face on This Morning Sofa.
What's she doing now? What's she up to?
I am not having
There's no respect. Lily,
fibres in my dressing room. I'm sorry. Polycotton and Velcro. Get it all out. It's a load of rubbish.
Very badly behaved in New Orleans.
It's just California. Why? What did you do?
I was plastered. I was forever in jazz bars. Frankie and Johnny Weller.
Judy Finnegan, you've got me rotten drunk at 10 o'clock in the morning on live television.
Baboons are a different story. They show you the bum and you have to scratch it.
Oh, no.
Yes,
no, you
that's
don't.
how you make friends. No, it makes hens and they lay eggs.
Chicken.
No, the male.
Cock.
Yeah.
Cock.
Yes, that's it.
I'll lean over. I put my hand in something squishy.
I go, oh, yes. And you have to carry on. And I go,
It's coming up through your fingers.
Doesn't feel real.
I know, it really doesn't. It feels so sudden, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We are joined now by Vanessa Feltz and Carol Vorderman alongside the late Dame Barbara Windsor's husband, Scott Mitchell, who counted Paul as one of his dear, dear friends. Hello, guys.
Hi there.
Welcome. It's good to see you. I mean, it came as a shock to everybody this morning, I think, waking up and hearing that news. It was Paul's husband, Andre, that announced the news in a statement saying that Paul died unexpectedly but peacefully on Tuesday evening. He said he will be greatly missed by his loved ones, friends, family, animals, and all those who enjoyed his humour, wit and compassion. I know that he would want me to thank you for all the love that you have shown him over the years. And there has been an outpouring of, you know, people grieving clearly, but also a real celebration of this man's life, because he seemed to bring so much joy to so many people.
Yeah.
You found out early this morning, didn't you?
I did. I mean, I'm a terrible sleeper, and I happened to look at my phone at about 2:30 a.m. and I saw a text from Andre. Now, Andre and I, we'd rarely text each other, and I just knew. Before I opened the text, I just knew, and he kindly just let me know before it came out. I'm just devastated because he was such an incredible man. I'm talking about the human, not the performer.
Yeah.
As a performer, we know he was this brilliantly talented, warm man, you know, who was very funny, very witty. But as a man, he was a lovely friend, especially, you know, in my experience to Barbara, especially when she was ill. Paul never forgot her. He continually came to the house. He'd turn up on the back of a motorbike on his way to work somewhere, and he'd sit with her for a couple of hours and he'd listen to her say the same thing over and over again. He truly, really was a good friend. And afterwards to me, he's never forgotten me either and pops in to see me. So I'm really, really sad and thinking of Andre and his family.
Vanessa, you must be so shocked by the news as well.
I'm absolutely shocked to the core. I really am. And I mean, I've known Paul for years and years. When I inherited the bed on the Big Breakfast from him. It had been, first of all, Paula Yates, then it was Paul, Lily Savage, and then it was me. And we had a few days of sort of handover. And at one point he said, "Would you want some of my dresses?" And I tried to think of a polite way to say, "Well, no, thank you, not really." But he was absolutely hilarious and so quick-witted and so clever. And he was what's called a polymath. I mean, he knew about all kinds of things, science, and he knew about history. And he used to call me the Delphic Sibyl.
What is that?
The Delphic Sibyl was a woman who lived in ancient Greece, so before the Trojan Wars, and she was a kind of oracle and a seer and a wise woman, and people used to come to her and ask her things, and she would answer even the most complicated and difficult questions. The Delphic Sibyl, and he used to call me that.
That is you.
What a compliment.
I know, that is you.
I didn't deserve it in any way, but I used to obviously love it when he used to call me that. And I have so many memories of him. Obviously, I was his colleague at Radio 2 for years and years as well, and he used to honestly light up the building. You know, he walked in the door, and everyone, the receptionist and the security, isn't it true? Because everyone loved him. And I've been hearing all morning. You know, Scott just said he used to arrive on the back of a motorbike, on a limo bike, and I've been getting texts all morning from the limo bike drivers. One of them, called Reese, said, "Oh my God, I'm so sad. I just don't know how to deal with this." They took him only last week, you know, to Annie, which he was in. And Reese said often that he'd have to literally pull the bike over because he was laughing so hard at what Paul was saying. And some comedians aren't funny in real life.
No,
and
exactly.
Paul O'Grady
the way he was
unbelievably funny in real life. That's very unusual.
Didn't you have some amazing memories of going to the ballet with him?
Yes.
What happened there?
Well, we went to Paris to the ballet. We saw Swan Lake in the lake at Versailles.
Oh, wow.
Actually, one of the most romantic nights of my entire life, which I spent with Paul O'Grady.
Oh, that's so lovely.
So a lovely memory that I had is Barbara and I went down to his farm in Kent and we spent the weekend with him. And we were all in the kitchen, this is many years ago, and we were all in the kitchen and suddenly we heard this clippity-clop on the stone floor. I thought it was Barbara, actually, that had left the room with her high heels. A little lamb walked in. He was rearing a little lamb that he'd called Warpy, because I think it had been rejected by its mother. And Paul he had it in the house, feeding it with a baby's bottle. And I just remember sitting there thinking, this is just
he just loved animals, didn't he? I mean, his work and his help. Let's go to Carol Vorderman now, who's joining us down the line. Carol, thanks for joining us this morning. I'm sorry it's under these sad circumstances, and you've been friends since you met in the 90s, so this has been a long friendship for you. Pride of Britain, talk about that, because one of your great memories of him was around that time.
Yeah, so now you've shown the piece with Richard and Judy and Albert Dock in Liverpool. I was part of that This Morning team back in the 80s up there as well, all being Northerners. And so I think I must have come across Paul there, but really started to get to know him in the 90s. And the thing that we must talk about with Paul was that he was a fighter. And he was a fighter. He never judged the weak. He never judged the vulnerable. He never judged the misunderstood. He would be there like a lion for them, because back in the day, he'd been a social worker. He'd rescued babies and children from domestic abuse. He'd lived all that. He wasn't just a showbiz person. He'd actually had this entire other life beforehand. And I think it was that fighter in him, the fighter for the good, that everybody, as well as being funny, as well as all of those things, his rants were famous, that we fell in love with because we trusted him. We knew that with Paul, whatever he was having a go about, he was having a go about TV execs when he was flipping over from ITV to Channel 4 and back again and all of that. And I was sort of a part of that time too. And you just knew he would always be speaking the truth. He was the most honest and the most sincere person I've ever met in the showbiz industry.
Yeah. And also funny as well. That's good.
Well, it was. I know you're going to show, loads and loads of clips. We all know that about Paul, but I wanted to say that about his sincerity.
Yeah.
And how he raged against the light. He was an amazing fighter. But many, many stories. I mean, we used to go out for lunch, which would normally end up 12 hours.
I would love to have been on one of those lunches.
Yeah, they were amazing.
I bet they were. Vanessa, you wanted to say something.
I just wanted to say, do you remember the show that was called An Audience With?
Yes.
And you'd have a celebrity, a big star on the stage, and then other celebrities in the audience asking them questions. And it always had exactly the same format, and they'd do all their best jokes. And when Paul O'Grady did it, I don't know if anybody remembers it. I was there. It was absolutely extraordinary because he did the whole thing as Lily Savage, in costume, in character, and it was more like a play, really. He was portraying this character for about an hour and a half in the most unbelievable. I've rarely seen anything like it.
As a broadcaster, he never used auto cue. He never had an earpiece like we do. I mean, he just would come in. I mean, that is so hard to do. That is somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, not relying on anybody, and just really relishing and enjoying in what they do. So just, even from a professional capacity, just watching him do what he did was just incredible.
And an ad-lib, my gosh, and his radio show was so funny.
So
without notes, without a script, without, just completely spontaneous. And he had this absolutely devoted and completely brilliant producer called Malcolm Prince. And they just used to riff off each other. And it was so smooth that you would imagine that it was rehearsed. And it wasn't. It really, because I've seen it happening, it wasn't. I mean, they're really unusually incredibly talented person. But people who were at an audience with that night, you didn't know whether to cry. You didn't know whether to... It was so moving. It was just absolutely remarkable.
It's such a long career as well, which is so incredible. And Vanessa is going to be here to take your calls in today's phone-in, where we're asking for your memories of Paul O'Grady. What do you want to hear from?
Oh, we want to hear from people who met him, obviously people who went to see him live, people who encountered him with dogs, maybe at Battersea Dogs Home or Pets Home or wherever. Just your memories of him, because he's touched so many of us in such a deep way, very profound way.
Yeah.
Well, you can give us a call for free on 08000 30 40 44 or download our free This Morning app to get involved. Please get in touch by 11:15 today, and you must be 18 or over.